UK Black Lives Matter activist shot in head at party. Police deny it was political. Now, if you do a search for Sasha Johnson, which is the name of the person, you will see the person that was shot in the head, the Black Lives Matter activist from the UK. You get these two stories on the top. You get the Sky News report and you get the Telegraph report. And just briefly, here's the Sky News report here. Go ahead, let's get this Sky News report. This is Sasha Johnson. So, highlighting right away, it's an anti-racist activist who's been shot in the head, and leading off right away, sowing the seeds of hatred and fear and discontent, couching this as a political assassination attempt. That's what Sky News is doing here, with evidence that suggests not at all what they're suggesting, but their sense of irresponsibility regarding the safety and health and welfare of the human beings that they serve. Well, it doesn't exist, and this story proves it. How they're covering this story proves just how violent and terroristic organizations such as Sky News, at least the Sky News version in the UK, is. Okay, look at her little smug face there. This is a young little lady that thinks she's part of the in crowd, and she's already looking at the rest of her audience like, how dare you think this is anything other than a political assassination? Nothing to suggest. As a matter of fact, there may be evidence to suggest that this may have been a gang-related crime, gang violence, that she wasn't even the intended target. She was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. So there you go. There's their coverage of it. Now let's go back. And so they begin with, she's the activist, she's being shot, stirring up hatred, fear, violence, all that, division, all of that this press is want to do because they're part of this so-called revolution, which is really a counter-revolution. It's a long time coming counter-revolution. This is the British and the American British loyalists fighting back against the United States for having a Bill of Rights, and they want to quash the Bill of Rights using the needs of the plea of the needy. And Sasha Johnson, I don't know the degree to which she's complicit or which she's just a useful idiot in the ploy that is actually seeking to meet the needs of the needy, or whether she's in on it. She most likely is probably not in on it, probably just someone who's been manipulated through fear and hate to lash out at her fellow poors rather than recognizing the people that put her people in this disadvantaged situation in the first place. And then this is the Telegraph UK. Right away. Well, hold on. Let's. There you go. So this is how they start off their video report. Right away, highlighting that she is, and then this following. Let's read her little headlines here as you're listening to her. Black Lives Matter activist Sasha Johnson was shot on Sunday. That's how they're leading. Following numerous threats as a result of her activism. So right away, the Telegraph UK. By the way, Telegraph UK definitely we should view them as basically North Korea because they're so anti-American militant. They sound like North Korea when they address anything to do with American liberty. They're constantly looking to undermine it and to fill the American people with hateful lies that continue to reinforce their own hateful, bigoted, racist narratives. So the police were called to a road. Now remember how they started it off. They went immediately, and people are headline readers. So this is basically the Telegraph UK burying the details. Well, you'll see, burying the details ahead of what they really want. They really want people to be hateful and angry and continue to support the draconian rules and regulations that will allow these disgusting human beings to continue to advance racism and bigotry in the name of stopping racism and bigotry. Which racism and bigotry, the version of racism and bigotry that they're fighting is very real, and the version of racism and bigotry that they are is even more real because it's far more powerful. It has billionaire corpo state nationalists supporting it. And then we finally get to following reports of gunshots in Concert Road in Southwark. And then she works in, so there you go. She works in activism and community support. So again, she is also part of the Taking Party initiative. And the mother of two remains in hospital with life-threatening injuries. And we at the Freedomists extend our prayers to her. I don't know much about her. She could be a great human being for all I know. But my critique here is not on her because I don't know enough about her to critique her. My critique is on how this story is being so irresponsibly covered, where they are going to suggest to you, and there you see what she, now I will say this, if she thinks that this is capitalism, that somehow changing the economic model is going to somehow bring justice to we the poor, well, you've got another thing coming, girly, because let me tell you this, Marxism, whenever it becomes when you have Marxism outside of the state, you might get something done, consensual Marxism, if you will, but whenever Marxism of any kind marries to the state, it will invariably produce far more imbalances of power between the haves and the have-nots than capitalism ever will. And you're seeing the way that America is moving towards this underlying Marxist belief system, that even in America, the haves are becoming more and the have-nots are becoming less, because that's not capitalism, that's statist Marxism. Now, there is versions of Marxism that I'm not so fundamentally opposed to, but all the versions of Marxism this little girl is most assuredly going to support is going to involve the state. So just based on that alone, let me change my my assessment of you and say you're part of the problem, Sasha. And I hope that you live, and I hope that you recover fully, and you have all of your capacity. You don't deserve to be shot in the head. Whatever reason that it happened, whether it was political or not. And I'm not saying whether this was a political targeting or not, but the evidence suggests strongly that it's not. So we have here from the headlines from San Diego Union Tribune, British Black Lives Matter activist Sasha Johnson shot in London following numerous death threats. Very, very horribly irresponsible. You're trying to incite people to violence. Whoever wrote this article, you should be arrested. I mean, if you're going to have these hate crime laws, I mean, not by my standards, not by Bill of Rights standards, you shouldn't be arrested, but by your own standards, the standards that you enforce, your critical race theory, whatever garbage you want to call it, you should be arrested because you're stirring up hate and violence. You're a hate speech manipulator there. BLM activist Sandra Johnson critically injured in UK shooting. Okay, well, then that's fine. That's a fine headline. That's about what you should have. You shouldn't try to say that this isn't political activism that was behind the shooting, nor should you say that it is. What you can suggest only is that so far the police are stating, well, the police statement said that at this very early stage of the investigation, there was no evidence to suggest a targeted attack or that the woman had received any credible threats against her prior to the incident. Now, I'm not taking what the police say just as a matter of fact. They might not have an accurate depiction of reality. It may very well turn out to be a political shooting. I don't know. I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it isn't. But I am saying anyone that is promoting this as a political activist shooting in the age in which we live in now is participating in violence and hate, is participating in hate speech and terrorism. By critical race theory standards, you should be shut down. By Bill of Rights standards, you should just be considered not a reliable source. No one should pay attention to any of these outlets ever again that chose to push this hateful, demonizing narrative with no proof. As a matter of fact, initially at least, proof seems to be against that narrative, not for it. Black Lives Matter activist Sasha Johnson shot in southeast London. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that title for Washington Post. Flipboard.com, Sasha Johnson, BLM activist in critical condition after being shot in head. That's perfectly fine. A perfectly fine story or a headline. BLM activist Sasha Johnson in critical condition after gunshots to head. Now that's fine in and of itself, but it starts off right away with a woman hailed as a strong, powerful voice. The Black equal rights movement has been shot in the head. Her colleagues have said. Now right away, that little opening sentence in and of itself, there's a connotation there. This was most assuredly a political shooting. That's how most human beings will make that assessment as they read a sentence like that. Black Lives Matter activist in critical condition after shooting in London. A prominent British Black Lives Matter activist was in critical condition after being shot in the head. Her political party said. The Talking Initiative Party announced Sasha Johnson had been hospitalized Sunday after being shot early that morning, stating the shooting followed numerous death threats. This is irresponsible. This is an irresponsible headline. You should, or opening paragraph. You should have somewhere in there the Initiative Party. You should definitely have that first and foremost. But first and foremost, what you should have is a paragraph even before you get to the police statement, even before you get to the political party statement. You should have a statement. If you're being a responsible journalist, a straight news journalist, the first paragraph should be something to the effect of, while the details remaining the nature of the shooting remain unclear, there are conflicting reports, that one suggesting this may have been a political assassination attempt, and the other suggested that this was violence unrelated to the activist herself. And then you could have went on to the titles. But when you don't do that, what you're really telling the people, your voters, your readers, your clients, that your customers that you're allegedly serving, what you're telling them is, I am not here to give you the proper information to let you independently decide what's what with what. I'm here to manipulate you using my significant power advantage to have further fear and hate and hopelessness, and to be further bigoted and further racist in how you view the world. So you're horrible, horrible human beings by my standards, not by yours. By your standards, I'm sure you're champions of whatever you think you're championing. But by my standards, I wouldn't trust you alone with a child. I'll just say that. Female black equal rights activist critical after shooting, colleagues say. That's a borderline, or I won't say necessarily. It's not a great headline, but it's not completely misleading, so I won't say too much against that. A woman hailed as a strong, powerful voice in the black rights movement has been shot in the head, her colleagues have said. Mother of three, Sasha Johnson is in critical condition in hospital. And then right away, they'll lead into the Taking the Initiative Party statement, and the Taking the Initiative Party is seeking to politically capitalize off of this shooting rather than waiting to see. And this is something that's common among all factionals, and I'm sure conservative factionals do many of the same similar things. And if it was one of their own that was shot, they would immediately go to, well, certainly it's a political hit as well. So shame on all of you that continue to manipulate the vast majority of human beings who have IQs of 100 or less. The majority of humanity has an IQ of 100 or less. They don't have nearly the same capacity as many others to analyze on their own, to figure out on their own, to sift out the BS from the real, and you know that. And that's why you put out these hateful, evil, disgusting articles manipulating your audience rather than serving your audience. So at this point, I don't know whether this was a political hit piece or a political assault, or whether she was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I'm not willing to say which is which, but I am definitely not willing to jump on board with of course she was shot for political reasons, and shame on those that have so quickly jumped to that conclusion. And I don't care, after this video is over, if I find out 15 minutes later, after this video is over, after I made this video, that, it might have been a political, I don't take back the words that I said here. There's nothing so far that I've seen that suggests that this was anything but a woman who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And it seems like what you're going to find out most likely, and I could be wrong, She was hit by, by incidental fire. She wasn't even aimed at. She was hit. She was just hit by crossfire is what may very well have happened. So with that, I will end this report. And just try to be diligent yourselves when you read these reports. If you're reading a straight news report and it's doing things like this, never, ever, ever, ever trust that outlet as a reliable source. You could use that outlet, but read it like you do agitprop, because it's seeking to manipulate you, not serve you.